Hey there, everyone. I hope you're having a great day. My name is Limeron Momopi, and I'm here to start a video series for a truly wonderful game, Final Fantasy XIV. I've been avidly gaming for the entire memorable portion of my life, and just like many of the rest of you, I've really come to love the online gaming experience. I hope to share with you all some of the information that I've discovered over my time playing this game, so that all of you can become much more confident and aware of some of the more elusive factors that this game presents. If any of you are unfamiliar for whatever reason with what type of game this is, it's a multiplayer RPG carrying a very similar focus as you'd have come to expect from the Final Fantasy franchise over the years. This game has a very, very lengthy single-player narrative that will end up uniting you with other players traveling the same path. That's where our journey here begins, as we delve deep into some of the actual game mechanics involved in playing this game. Final Fantasy XIV has a really rocky history, and one that you might find particularly interesting, but the details of all that are way beyond the purpose of this series. Not only that, but I'm far from qualified to provide you with all of those little details. What I have done is link the video in the description that outlines some of the history that this game has had very well in my opinion, but let's not get sidetracked and get straight into it. In this video, we're going to explore a few of the most basic concepts that Final Fantasy XIV is built on. We'll be covering my personal opinion on the sort of mentality required to move forward on this journey with confidence. Next, we'll be outlining each of the three various roles that all jobs are categorized within. We'll also be covering the game's most fundamental property, which is movement-based mechanics. Next, equipment and its influence on your performance. And finally, how the game server itself interacts with your character's movement, which will allow you much greater control over the results you receive. Now, before we get into any of the details of how Final Fantasy XIV actually works, I first want to begin by saying thank you for approaching this transition into the game's more difficult challenges by preparing yourself with the great tool of knowledge. There is a very crucial aspect to playing the game's most difficult content, but it actually has nothing to do with the technical factors of the game at all. Improving and achieving your goals in the end game of FF14 first, and more than anything else, will require dedication. Some of the content we have available to us can be very challenging, and for many different reasons. The specific thing I'm referring to here is the social side of raiding. This game functions in a cooperative manner, and this means that you will, in some way or another, be dependent on your allies in order to be successful. That's right, there are no one-man army perks here. There will most likely come a point in time where you or an ally of yours will become stressed out over the difficulties that you're experiencing. Your job when playing through any of the various content in the game with others is to assist your team in success. You should be trying your best to be as useful as possible, regardless of any circumstances. When many things are going wrong, or there seems to be a lot of inconsistency with your group, you may want to start pinpointing other people's mistakes. Stop. There's a fine line here. This is generally very unproductive, unless you are elaborating on the issues you do notice and explaining solutions to the issue at hand. When you're playing through content with others, you need to stay focused on your own personal mistakes, not others. And there will be many mistakes you're making. To be more rigorous, there will be nearly zero occurrences where you personally have made zero mistakes in any encounter. If you don't focus on those mistakes you're making, you will quickly find yourself at a plateau in skill. There's a much better return on investment to improving yourself than to improving others. In Final Fantasy XIV, we deal with a game system that really revolves around character movement and character interactions. Most of the mechanics you'll find throughout this game are going to be handled simply by you being in the right place at the right time. This is true no matter what job you choose to play. But before we talk about the details of movement in the game, let's outline each role and how the roles interact with each other. Final Fantasy XIV is built on a formula some refer to as the Holy Trinity. The three holy aspects we're talking about here are DPS, which means damage per second, a term that you'll quickly find yourself familiar with, tank roles, and finally, healing roles. DPS jobs simply deal damage, and that is their entire purpose. In fact, dealing damage is something we'll quickly find that every job is greatly responsible for. Healing jobs are responsible for making sure none of their party members die from damage received. They can restore HP and, in many cases, reduce damage that a player would receive to begin with. Lastly, tank jobs are responsible for keeping the game's monsters from attacking and killing the rest of the party, as well as reducing the amount of damage that a monster can deal, specifically to themselves. They have many abilities to reduce the amount of damage that they'll personally receive. The movement-focused gameplay here is not exclusive to any one of these roles. Every job in the game will find a need to move around the battlefield for some reason. Some damage-dealing classes even require a specific position to take full advantage of some of their skills. Okay, I think it's time to address this overarching theme I keep mentioning. The game is very much based around movement requirements, but what does that actually mean? Well, basically, the most difficult aspect of this game is somewhat similar to juggling. Imagine you were a great opera singer who didn't know how to juggle. But one night, while performing at a show, someone in the audience began to throw a series of balls at you. Well, what are you going to do with all those balls? If you're prepared for them, and you know how to handle multiple balls, you're going to catch them one by one and juggle them while you sing. Yeah. If you're unprepared for them, you're either going to drop them all, or you're going to botch your performance in order to catch them all the while cursing out the clown in the audience who thought it was a good idea to begin with. With this game, if you have no responsibility other than to stand around and do what you do best, then you're probably going to be able to perform fairly consistently. The challenge comes in when you need to begin dealing with a lot of unpredictable motion or mechanics and changing situations throughout a fight. Becoming skilled at juggling these metaphorical balls is going to require a lot of awareness, preparation, and especially planning. I'm sure I can assume by now you realize that the way equipment progresses through this game is very linear. As you level up, you'll unlock new equipment options. Unfortunately, though, the equipment variety within a specific level's capabilities is almost non-existent. The current structure of game progress does create many options once you've reached maximum level. However, even then, it's only a matter of collecting the highest item levels possible. If you haven't paid close attention, equipment has its own separate level, just like your character has its own level. There are some negligible factors that differentiate items of similar item level, but as a novice, or even if you're a moderately experienced player, the only thing you need to focus on is obtaining equipment of the highest possible item level. The small variations between substats or secondary stats will not impact your experience at all until much further down the road. While these substats can be neglected, if you enjoy optimizing your character's performance, they will give you some things to consider once you're really finished with whatever is currently the most difficult endgame content. Finally, we're going to cover one of the great pitfalls of this game. The server that we connect to when playing 14 is tuned in a way that causes what feels like maybe just a wee bit of lag, or maybe just a whole lot of lag. There's an important distinction to make here in understanding how this works: the client versus server relationship. Our game clients are simply pieces of computer software. The game we're all playing here is only one of two parts to the total Final Fantasy XIV experience. There is a second factor that's used in order to put together the final results that we actually experience: the game's server. I hope this analogy will help. Your game's client is similar to a tunnel, where on one side we have ourselves controlling the game via commands that we yell through the tunnel. And on the other side, we have the game's server, which in some cases will yell back to us with responses. As you could imagine, there is going to be a brief delay in this communication. The same is true for the commands that you input into the game. Important to understand is that this will not hold true for all commands that you input. There are some features that do not require the server's approval or response in order to be accepted. These commands will feel much more responsive than certain other effects. We call the delay experienced between providing an input and that input finally being handled by the server polling rate. The specific focus I want to take here when describing polling rate is how it applies to our movement in the game. Where do we exist in the game world at any given time? Polling rate creates the illusion that our game is unaware of where our characters really are in the world. Quite contrary, actually. The game's server will always have your character's position registered to wherever you were previously, about a half a second ago. This effect simulates a nearly 400 millisecond ping, while your actual ping will not truly be anywhere near those values. The thing to understand here is that all of the outcomes we see our client present to us are based on the data handled on Final Fantasy XIV's server-side computers. While we may see ourselves standing in position X, the game server may have you registered at a different location for various reasons, most specifically due to polling rate. I hope this video was able to outline some of the general properties of how Final Fantasy XIV functions. My goal is for this series to be a handbook for those of you who are entirely new to the game's raid content, or anyone who is just interested in exploring some of the details and options available to elevate their skills to the next level. I hope to see you again next time when we explore the true properties of each different role in the raid environment. Please let me know whether this video was at all helpful in the comments section. This is my first attempt at producing content like this. If you hated this content, go ahead and give it a fat thumb down, but if you could, also let me know why in the comments section so that I can improve the series. Your feedback will be incredibly useful in helping me improve this series and to offer me some direction as to what areas are the most elusive to you all. Thanks a lot for watching.